Well, Kay, as we finished in one part of the world, we're going to move to another part of the world, and that is the one that you are in. Because in the United States right now, there are some crazy things happening on the ground recently in Washington, D.C., with Trump basically calling in the military. So, to discuss that and more, we are thrilled to be joined by Mara Verheyden-Hilliard, a constitutional rights litigator and co-founder and executive director of the Partnership for the Civil Justice Fund. Mara, welcome to the Freedom Side Live.
Thank you for having me. Always nice to see you.
Well, it's great to see you too, though I wish the circumstances were less dark because, I mean, what the hell? Trump has basically invoked this unlawful federal takeover of Washington, D.C., declaring a crime emergency despite a 30-year decline in violent crime. So, Mara, can you explain how this manufactured crisis is essentially a prototype for martial law? And this is, of course, isn't the first time that Trump has done this, but he's basically extending what he started in LA to other cities across the country.
Well, I think what's happening right now in Washington, D.C. is, as you said, it is a prototype. It's a prototype of a police state. And Trump is looking at the District of Columbia as an easy mark for him to start imposing military rule, military force, federal police, National Guard, and to normalize it, to have people get used to the idea of seeing the military on the streets of American cities and to have that kind of occupation force become a day-to-day existence. And he started with the District of Columbia with a racist tirade on Monday, in which he was, proclaiming the city as a disgusting wasteland. And, he doesn't know anything about the city, of course, but it doesn't matter. And also talking with just like dripping racism about basically bulldozing, primarily working class Black neighborhoods, using a lot of veiled language, inciting and calling for violence against the residents of District of Columbia. But what he's done here is he has called out the National Guard because by a quirk of law in the District of Columbia, unlike most, well, real states that have governors, the governors can call out the National Guard. The District of Columbia National Guard can be called up by the president. So he's done that. And then he's federalized the District of Columbia Metropolitan Police Department. That has never been done before. There is a provision, Section 40 in the DC Home Rule Act, that allows this to happen under certain circumstances. Certainly, we don't think either the circumstances for National Guard or federalization of DC police have been met. There are not emergency circumstances. Crime has fallen. He actually said he was doing this because of an increase in violent crime. But we know that that's not what this is about.
Like Rania mentioned, he's already talking about expanding this to other cities. He named Oakland, LA, Chicago, New York City, Baltimore, all cities with black mayors, by the way, but saying they're all crime ridden, they're all, anarchic, chaotic. And I guess, he's doing the DC thing under the guise of this Home Rule Act, but with states, I mean, it's an even different case where they have constitutional protections, states have autonomy, and I mean, it really feels like he's just completely doing away with the autonomy of state governments, like he tried to do in LA with the protests there. So, what do you make of this? I mean, is any of this legal? What is the precedent for this, and is this going to be challenged in courts?
I would expect this will absolutely be challenged in courts. And we, of course, at the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund are evaluating our next steps in the District of Columbia. But what he's doing in DC, naming this as an emergency, I mean, the basis for the emergency is that he's saying an increase in violent crime, which didn't happen, doesn't exist. And he's pointing to particular incidents of violent crime. Specifically, as I think everyone probably saw, he was making much about the beating of the Doge worker by 15-year-olds, the Doge worker who was famously known for calling himself Big Balls. and making that the point of why now DC has to become, under military type force. But there's another challenge that's happening, and it's aside from the legal challenge, which is community challenge. And this is the same thing he's going to face. He faced it in LA, he's facing it in DC. Immediately, members of the community have been out in the streets. They have been shouting "Know Your Rights" information. They have been documenting what the police are doing. They are condemning what the police are doing. They are mocking what the police are doing. And it really shows this incredible community response by people who are making it clear, as this will be made clear all across the US, the people of the United States are not going to sit still and allow massive military force to occupy their cities. It's not going to happen. And I think he thinks that it will be either a walk or a massive show of force to try and push people down into submission, and it won't succeed.
Well, Mara, in the sense of it won't succeed, can you talk about what the pushback is? Or at the moment, is there any sort of political pushback from the Democrats, or are there organizations coming together to do anything to prevent this? Is there anything standing in Trump's way?
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of organizations in DC, ours and many others, and immigrant rights groups and civil liberties and civil rights groups who are all organizing. There are community groups and grassroots groups who are on the ground who are organizing. People are absolutely standing up. They're not pausing, they're not waiting. And there is, as I said, just this incredible community outpouring from people who are unaffiliated, who are on the street and suddenly see all these federal agents, because the other aspect is not just the federalization of DC police or the National Guard. The National Guard is mainly standing around the National Mall dressed in uniform with their armored carriers. That's pretty much what they're doing. It's like a photo op right now. But what they are doing is, starting before his announcement on Monday, they began surging hundreds of federal law enforcement, including a lot of FBI agents, but as well as DHS and other federal law enforcement, into the streets of the District of Columbia. Last night, they set up a checkpoint, and they were interrogating people who were driving down the U Street, 14th Street corridor. So this is the kind of operation where they're suddenly putting people up. But the resistance is really very profound. It's multi-layered. It's coming from a lot of different sectors. Again, I don't see people sitting still or standing for this, and you can see right now that people are mobilizing, because we're going to stand up and fight for constitutional rights. We as lawyers, we as community members. These are rights that people hold dear, and they're not going to allow an authoritarian rule to be imposed on the population of the United States.
Mara, there was this leaked DHS memo. I don't know if you saw news about it, saying that this policy might actually be employed for years, that soldiers might be deployed to cities for years to counter these, and I'm quoting here, Al-Qaeda and ISIS-like threats from urban centers. And, I can't help but think this really overlaps with a lot of the rhetoric that's been coming out in the last 2 years since the start of the Gaza genocide, or even before with the war on terror. But there seems to be more and more of a move, especially under the Trump administration, to label people as terrorists or to tie them in with that. So how do you see that playing a role? How do you see that affecting protest and civil liberties?
The Trump administration has, as you said, tried to label all manner of groups and organizing and people under a terrorism label because they believe it gives them a source of authority to act against people in the United States. So they have done that with immigrant rights organizations, trying to suggest that by defending immigrant rights, that's somehow defending drug cartels. They've done this against those who are standing against genocide in Gaza by saying that if you are standing up for the right of people not to be starved to death, somehow that is support for terrorism. So we see this, they're playing that hand frequently and a lot. We certainly expect to see more of it. But again, these are on feeble legal grounds, very feeble legal grounds. Certainly, they are going to try and grab at everything they can grab to try and assume a source of authority. But like what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. right now, I mean, it would be funny if it could be funny at certain points. I mean, it's a very serious situation. It's a very dangerous situation. It's a very oppressive situation. But, for those that saw, there was that man that is alleged to have thrown a wrapped Subway sandwich at law enforcement, and they arrested him and charged him with felony, or they're saying that they're going to charge him with a felony, presumably a felony assault on a police officer for allegedly throwing a Subway sandwich at a police officer. And then it turned out that he actually worked for the Department of Justice. And Pam Bondi came out today and announced that this proves that he's a member of the deep state that they've been fighting all along. It says so much about that operation.
Mara, it seems like with this administration, they're really trying all angles, which you just alluded to. I mean, whether it's in order to sort of like impose police state, as you say, fascist rule. Maybe that's a bit of extreme language to use, but they've tried to do it through the realm of Palestine, right? By, using it as a way to strip people of their rights and disappear them and put them in immigration detention and eventually move on to American citizens if they could. And that's sort of stalled for the time being, but it's still in the works. They're trying to do it through, supposed violent crime, which isn't even like a thing right now. At least, if you're talking about a 30-year low in violent crime, not really sure how you can go around using that to justify putting the U.S. military in U.S. cities. And before that, they had tried to use the issue of protest, violent protest when people were protesting in L.A. And in some cases rioting against these ICE disappearances of immigrants. It just seems like God, we're not even a year into this administration. It's a really overwhelming attempt through every legal measure imaginable to really try to impose, like you said, a police state. I guess I'm just making a remark here more than anything else, but I'm curious your thoughts on that, because I assume there's more to come.
Well, as much as, I am and others are mocking the operations at points because they frankly deserve to be, it is also extremely serious. It is incredibly threatening. What we are seeing in Washington, D.C. is maybe the most dangerous step yet, because it is absolutely the model. It is an effort to impose police state tactics in D.C. and then roll them out in cities across the United States. The threat that this poses is exceptional. The threat that this poses to fundamental democratic rights in this country is exceptional and unprecedented. And it really does require every single one of us to figure out what role we can play in terms of building consciousness, organizing opposition. From our perspective at the Partnership for Civil Justice Fund, all legal means necessary to find ways to challenge unlawful conduct, which is what we are doing. And the threat that Trump wishes to pose is also what you described. It's their sort of shock and awe attack. It's to make people feel unstable, off guard, overwhelmed, unable to respond. But I think what we are seeing is that people are learning, okay, actually, we get this. We see what's happening. He's trying to terrorize us. He is terrorizing populations. There are entire populations of the United States that are under constant threat and fear and terror of being kidnapped and snatched, taken away, sent away. This is absolutely terrorizing. But there's also so many people who are able to defend their neighbors and defend their coworkers and defend their friends and their families, and who are doing that. Because when you have an epic battle like this, which is what this is becoming, everyone has to make a decision about who they're going to be and where they're going to be and how they want to be able to look back on this on the other side of it. And I think most of us are making the right decision about how we're moving forward in this moment.
What would you tell people who are seeing what's happening, that are frustrated? What would you say they should do, or how can they sort of help it to stop this, push for a police state?
Everyone needs to be organizing. So if you're not part of an organization, find an organization. It doesn't matter what it is, but find a community, find a group, find people that you can talk to, find those you can organize with. Find a way to be part of a process of those who want to stand up together. Then you don't feel isolated. Part of the terrorism and terrifying nature of what this administration does is also to try and make people feel so afraid and alone and that no one has their back. But when you are organizing and you're standing in solidarity with others, that goes away. And you know that you have so many